So today, I want to welcome you guys to another inspiring episode of Paddle Forward. I'm thrilled to be your guide. My name is Anna Connie Walters. I am the owner of Fat Mermaids, and I will be your host today. And today we are going to dive into the beautiful journey of finding balance as a new mom and a military spouse. In today's episode, we'll explore the unique challenges faced by these incredible individuals and discover how to navigate at the demands of motherhood while supporting a military spouse. My name, again, is Anna Connie Walters, and I actually am also a military spouse. I've been married for almost 4 years. And my husband and I have actually known each other for a lot longer. We met back in 2001, and we stayed friends for a really long time. And then many years later, we reconnected. He was coming back from a deployment overseas in Iraq or Afghanistan, one of those places. And I reached out to him. Someone had told me that he had made it back home, and just to check to make sure he was okay, to see how family was. And then one thing led to another. We ended up finding out that we, you know, each kind of had a crush on each other. And then we decided to meet. We hadn't seen each other in like 6 years physically. And we found out that there was something actually there. And so we dated for a really long time and got married in Hawaii when he was stationed there. And from there, we pretty much got orders to Okinawa, Japan, which is where I'm at now. And I think balancing the responsibilities of motherhood and being a supportive military spouse can sometimes feel overwhelming. I am a new mom of he's now 14 months old, and it's definitely not anything that I could have really prepared myself for. It was something that we weren't really even sure that was going to happen. It took a really long time for us to get pregnant. We had to go through a lot of things, and it just didn't seem like it was going to happen for us. Which, if it didn't, it didn't. I was kind of prepared for it, but I at least wanted to try. But my journey into motherhood it started out a little rough. I had kind of a traumatic birthing experience, and it was hard being overseas, not really having any support from family standpoint. At the time of his birth, Okinawa, Japan still was under strict restrictions for incoming people. You couldn't really, the process to bring someone into the country from as a US citizen, um, was just almost impossible. And it just, we didn't even try. We just told my mom that it probably wasn't going to happen. And it was really hard. It was hard for my family. It was hard for me. So being, there's already that element of it's hard as being a military spouse, and then you're adding this element of being a new mom, which is stressful in itself. And for those military spouses who are living overseas, especially during COVID, it just added that even extra layer that, I definitely have developed a profound respect for mothers in general, for parents in general. Um, it's hard. I didn't realize how hard it was until I became a parent myself. And when we celebrated his first year, I laughed because I was like, it should be a party for us, not a first year birthday party for him. It should be a party for, you and me, because we survived the hardest, like most stressful year of my life. And, you know, it definitely is overwhelming. Becoming a military spouse, I had a few years between that and becoming a new mom, and being a military spouse was definitely hard. And I had a hard time kind of adapting when I became a real military spouse. I mean, when you're not married, it's sometimes even more stressful because you lose kind of a sense of identity. You don't really have any availability of resources on base that are really great when you become an actual military spouse. And so you're like, kind of feel absent, like you're invisible when you're dating, and then you become a spouse, and then it's almost like all these expectations fall on top of you. And so today we're going to uncover the secrets to finding harmony, to developing a self-care routine, and really finding that balance amidst all this chaos. And I think with the right tools, the right mindset, and definitely the right support, you can not only survive, but thrive in this really extraordinary adventure. You really become part of this elite club of amazing people. And when become a true partner, you kind of get married both to the military and whoever you choose to be like your human partner. I kind of had a different perspective when I got married because I myself was in the military. Both my brothers joined the military after I did. One went into the Air Force like me, and the other one went into the Army. And I had been friends with my husband, who was on multiple deployments during his career. And then we dated for almost 10 years. I want to say we dated for 8 years before we got married. And I went through a really long process and was able to kind of adapt and navigate my journey through becoming a military spouse based on my previous experience, my personal experience of being in the military, understanding the importance of why certain things have to happen. And that I think really helped. I think understanding the insides of the military, of just being like a military person, help. I'm not saying that you need to enroll in and enlist in the military, but I definitely think that you should have conversations with your husband or wife as to what they do, or ask them what it's like to be in the military, or what was it like for them in basic training, or just kind of open that communication and understanding kind of their perspective, or if they can give you kind of a non-bias understanding or explanation of certain things, and the mentality that they have to have really does help you kind of understand a little bit more. This episode of Paddle Forward is inspired by a blog that I actually wrote, and it is for Tenderhearted Tuesday. It should be airing about the same time as this episode, and I really do dive deeper into the topic. But it's nice to have that audio, that visual of me being able to really express myself and my own experience, and how I really navigated, and still am navigating, being a new mom, and then also still kind of evolving that military spouse, duty, I guess. Because it really is. I mean, you become part of the military, and a lot of the times, if you've ever gone to any type of ceremony where it's either an enlistment or a promotion or a retirement, there's the spouses and the children become part of the ceremonies, because they do understand that behind every, in our case, my husband's in the Marine Corps, but behind every successful military member is a strong military spouse, and sometimes also a strong military family. And it's true. I mean, we do become, in a sense, uh, un, involuntarily enlisted in the military. But I encourage you to check out the blog, because I do give recipes out and go a little bit more in depth into resources and so forth. I also give you the opportunity to go through a quick yoga practice to kind of just find inner peace. Was a huge, huge part of how I manage my stress and how I manage my chaos in becoming a military spouse. And I give you some DIY recipes and more information on creating that self-care routine, and really taking care of yourself and finding that balance. But I want to include some more information, and I hope that this podcast really helps inspire, maybe provoke some things that you need to, think about and change. Um, and really, it's about uncovering the power of self-care, exploring, the art of balance, and discovering really how to thrive in the midst of the unique challenges faced. Like I said, for me, yoga became a main pillar when we first started dating and I moved in with him. I was in a very dark place. I left my everything. Basically, I had moved from Washington, D.C., where I had lived for almost 15 years. I had a great job, and things changed there. I decided to go home. He was actually in Japan at the time, and I went home to be with my family. I hadn't really been with them for a really long time. I became kind of a workaholic. I had every excuse. I had like 3 jobs, and I just, in my 20s really pushed myself, and family just wasn't, I loved my family, but I never made really a lot of time to go home. And so I decided I wanted to go home and be with my family, hang out with my brother, watch my nephew grow up. And so I went home, and a year later, I moved in with my well, at the time, he was not my husband, but we wanted to move in together to make sure that it was going to work. And we were in Yuma, Arizona. If you've never been there, if you've never been stationed there, I don't recommend it, but I think it was harder for me because I grew up in the desert. I was born in Indio, California, very close to Palm Springs, and I just am not a fan of the desert. I always said I never would move back there. I will visit because my grandma still lives there, and I have a lot of family in Indio and in the desert area, but I will never move back there. And then I got stationed with my, at the time, boyfriend, and it was hard. I went from a city life to this life where like there was nothing there, and I went into like a deep depression. I was working nights, he was working days. I had lived like 6 years of my life previously, and my whole entire world revolved around myself, like me, myself, and I. It was me, 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 me. And I just threw myself into this relationship and moving in with another person and learning how to make it not me, 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 me. Like my husband, I think, was very already, prepared. He was ready for a relationship. And I thought I was, but I think I was more prepared for the thought of the relationship, the idea. I like the idea of the relationship, but I wasn't really prepared to what entailed about being in a relationship. And it was a really, really sharp learning curve for me, at least. I just had a hard time replacing me with us and we, and it was just like, oh my gosh. And working nights was awful. I mean, I loved the job, I loved my friends, but I did not like, I was not, that was just not for me. I had a really hard time adjusting to that night schedule. I was, now 30, and I was like, yeah, this is for the birds. I mean, in my 20s, this was okay, but now I'm in my 30s. My heart problems were really challenged because of, the changing in my sleep schedule. And it made it even harder as a relationship to connect. And so my husband was in charge of doing some spouse event things, and he would encourage me to come, and I really didn't want to. I was like, I'm not married. Like, we're not married. I don't need to be going to no spouse events. But he kind of made me, I don't want to say made me, but he like really, really encouraged me and guilted me to go into one specific event. And I ended up meeting the commanding officer's wife at this event, Dina Swift. I will forever be grateful, indebted to her. She saw me, and I kind of was there but not really socializing, and just kind of like watching and observing, and participating like really minimal. And she invited me to her yoga class. She was a yoga instructor as well. And I came up with like every excuse I could, like, no, I work nights and la la. She's like, oh, no. It's, at this time, and it's free. Your first class is free if you're, for a military spouse. I was like, oh, we're not married. And she's like, it's okay. But, like, you're basically a military spouse. So like, I'll still extend the free thing to you. And like every excuse I had, she had a comeback to. So I was like, fine. So one day after work, I went, and OMG, like, she is such an amazing yoga teacher. I was immediately in love, and coincidentally, I cried on the way home. Like, I had a complete release. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, because you've like never tried yoga, or you've never had that type of a connection, or a true release from a yoga practice, I'm definitely going to have to do another episode on that. But I cried on my way home, and ended up going back. I mean, her classes were like not very expensive. It was like $5 a class or something silly. And I went once a week, and my, husband noticed that there was some changes even within me, and would then every week ask, are you going to go to yoga class today? Like, are you excited about it? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go. And I mean, I learned so much about myself, about yoga. It was an amazing, amazing time. And then of course, like, it always happens in military spouses. You guys know what I'm talking about. You find your tribe, you find these amazing people that make you really feel connected, and you really feel a sense of being, accepted, and understanding your role as a military person, partner. And then they get orders and you have to leave. And it's this feeling of really, the best way I could explain it to people who are not in the military, meaning like families who are not military families, is this sense of being evicted from your life. I really, really, that's the best analogy I can come up with. It's very hard on the military families. It's hard on the kids. They have to leave their school, their friends, and spouses have to leave jobs that they may really, really love. For me, when we moved here to Okinawa, I had just gotten the courage to go back to school. I wanted to become a microbiologist. And I had been contemplating this since we were in Yuma, and he had been on rapid deployment in Hawaii. So he was basically gone almost the entire time we were there. I maybe saw him 18 months out of the 3 years we were there. He was always gone. And I decided with that extra time, so that I wouldn't dwell on the anxiety of him being away, that I was going to do some self-improvement and go back to school. I finally got the courage. And I was so close to finishing the degree, to the point where I could then transfer into the actual laboratory technologist program in a sister college that was on island. And then he got orders, and literally we had 45 days to basically get everything ready and, basically move overseas. We had just gotten married. We had been married 6 months. Yeah. And it was just a lot. I mean, people were like, do you feel different? How does it feel to be married? Like, had been dating for so long. I was like, it doesn't feel any different. I mean, I don't know. I guess that's a good thing. It feels the same. And so that part wasn't necessarily the stressful part. It was just having to do all this stuff. He was deployed while I was trying to figure out, as a new military spouse, how to like get all these things, get my physical, get cleared. It was just crazy. And to do this on my own, it was just even harder because he was deployed. And when he came back, we literally, I think, had maybe 30 days, like with him being physically on the island, to then actually physically move overseas to Japan, a country that I didn't speak the language to. Never been, I had been to Okinawa when he was stationed there before we got married, like many, many years when he was there, but um, not to live there. And so that was stressful. That was stressful because we had the same experience moving to Hawaii when we had like finally gotten, you know, my depression was starting to like level up. I finally found my tribe of women and people. We were fishing together. We were enjoying Yuma, funny enough, and making the best of it. And then he gets orders like, early, of course. And I'm like, I can't. I was like, well, I guess I'm going to have to go move back home with my mom. I mean, I just was like already in my mind, I'm not going to Hawaii. I was like, what if I can't find a job? I mean, I'm going to be on an island. What if I don't like it? Like, that's a huge, huge commitment. And he's like, he just was like, wait, what? You're not coming with me. He's like, look, I really, really want you to come with me. We weren't married. So I was going to have to figure out how to get myself there. Like, we were going to have to pay for me to get out there and, find some place off base because I couldn't live on base because I didn't have base access. And it was just like, no, there's no way. No, it's too stressful. That sounds crazy. I mean, it was already crazy enough for me to leave everything that I had established when I came home to be with my family, to then pick up and move with you. And now you want me to do that again? Like, no, I just started liking my job. I had moved out from night shifts. I had actually started working in a great practice with an OBGYN who was the neonatal specialist there. And I loved it. I loved working with him. I just, going back to being in the medical, like assisting kind of thing before I was doing lab tech stuff. And I liked it, but it was just kind of, there was no real growth opportunities there. And so I found yoga, I found Dina, and I found she introduced me to a bunch of other spouses, and they were awesome. And I was doing things and I was opening up and blossoming. And all of a sudden, now you want to like literally take me and uproot me and take me to like another foreign place, even farther away from my family and friends. I don't think so. Obviously, he convinced me to go. And then it happened. I got there. I struggled, but I did get a job. And then it took a little bit of time because I was like the only employee there at the job. Eventually, they hired more people. Eventually, I found Sup Yoga. I found Kelsey from Yoga Floats. I found Tabitha. OMG, she's so amazing. And I slowly, Ian Masterson, like I found my tribe again. It took me like 3 or 4 years to really feel at home in Hawaii. I started to go back to school. I I started and we got married, and I was able, well, but even before I got married, he connected me with the commanding officer's wife and the sergeant major's wife of our unit before the deployment. And they invited me to be part of like a deployment ferry thing. And so they started to like help me get on base for certain spouse events. And I was really starting to feel at home. And then we got orders to go to Okinawa, Japan. And that was literally 6 months before COVID. So yoga has truly been the backbone to finding my balance, and meditating, staying in shape. Sup yoga elevated that. It was that element of water, that healing aspect. It's basically like a big Epsom salt bath is what it felt like. And it just was freeing. It was non-biased, it was welcoming, it was loving, and it was everything that I basically needed. And so it was nice to know that I was going to be able to take that with me now moving forward. And then I became a yoga instructor because I wanted to pay it forward. I wanted to teach people, not just military spouses, but military members, to manage their stress. I really started to see this connection between stress and not managing it properly and my health. And I had been diagnosed since I was 25 with 2 heart problems, and yoga really helped. I mean, it was so just bizarre to me to think like, I had been training for marathons and working out super hard, and those things seemed to stress my body more and make my blood pressure and stuff like worse sometimes, where I was like losing weight, I was gaining more weight. It was crazy. And then when I kind of gave it all up and just focused on yoga, it was like the light bulb. It was so transformative to realize that all I needed was really some rest and recovery, both mentally and physically. And I continued. I am the queen of pivoting. I mean, every time we've had to move, I've pivoted my career. I've pivoted some way to better myself. When we moved to Japan, it was really hard. I couldn't find a job. I couldn't get hired in the medical field, period. I didn't have enough credentials. I didn't have, I was fighting for literally a handful of jobs amongst hundreds of spouses who were more qualified than me. And I decided to just pivot and throw myself into Fat Mermaids, and became certified as a yoga instructor. And then we decided that we wanted to try to get pregnant. And it was 2.5 years of trying. We had to do a lot of stuff. It was not helpful that it was during COVID and I wasn't getting the medical support I needed. I took things into my own hands, really did a lot of research, a lot of just changes in lifestyle to try to prepare my body, manifest the best I could that I was going to be a mom. And we decided at the age of 40, if it did not happen for us, that it just wasn't meant to be and that we would be okay. And that one day when he was going to be retired, we would consider at that point adoption if we really wanted to have, a kid to raise between the two of us. We have 2 kids already, Sebastian and Lauren, and they're both adults. And so it's been fun watching them grow up as a bonus mom. But I wanted to try to see if I could have we could have a child together. And as always, the way things happen, a few months before I turned 40, I got pregnant. I found out that I was pregnant the day I graduated prenatal yoga instructors training. I was trying to find a niche within the yoga community. It just felt super saturated, and I wanted something to help me stand out. And prenatal yoga just seemed like the next step. So I, told him, and yoga became a big factor in helping me get through the pregnancy the best way possible, the healthiest I could be. I really, really enjoyed pregnancy, and yoga became that pillar again through pregnancy. So there are so many resources that I think spouses just don't take advantage of. And I really hope people will use this podcast as an inspiration and go to the actual blogs where I actually give you the resources, because there's so many. And I think that that's the best advice I could give you, other than if, you're willing to try yoga or meditation. I definitely strongly recommend that you find a place that you feel comfortable, whether it's online or in a studio, but really, really look into the resources that are offered on base. So yeah, I thank you for joining us on this episode of Paddle Forward. I really hope you found some value and insights on finding that balance as a new mom and military spouse. I think for me, the top recommendations or tips I could give you is try giving yoga and meditation a chance. Finding gratitude every day for just the things, even if it's the smallest thing, like you had the best cup of coffee, or you can have a sip of coffee every day, or whatever it is. um Enjoying your children and being present for them, and just enjoying whatever is given to you. We're in Japan, so we're trying out new foods and we're exploring new parks. And I'm excited for him. I'm excited that he gets to travel. I didn't get to travel until I was 30, and I really feel like there's so much out there to be explored. And so that's kind of that, frowned upside down mentality, finding grace and just enjoying being a military spouse, feeling that sense of being an elite group, is really helpful in helping you set that mindset. So remember, self-care is not a luxury, it's a necessity. My blog goes really into that self-care in a bigger perspective and not just about yoga, and really taking that time to nurture yourself and finding those moments of peace and relaxation. And again, seeking that support from your community. Um, don't forget to check out the blog. It's on my website at www.fatmermaidsclub.com, and I'll have a link in the episode's description so that you can find it really easily. Again, it has insights, even sharing really nice DIYs and more information on setting that self-care routine. Don't miss the YouTube video that's going to be featuring that short yoga practice that I talked about finding inner peace. It's like 15 minutes or 5 minutes, something like that. It's really short, but it's a great way to learn how to prioritize your well-being and connect with your inner strength. And then if you've never tried yoga, then it's a great practice because it's really short and super beginner friendly. As always, don't forget to subscribe if you really enjoyed this podcast episode. Give me a review, subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel for even more tips, parenting videos, insights, and so much more. As always, keep paddling forward, embrace the journey, and remember that you are capable of navigating the challenges and finding balance in this beautiful adventure of motherhood and military spousal support. I am here, your sister in arms. You are doing amazing. In case you need to hear that, you are an amazing parent. You are an amazing military spouse. You are an amazing person. Stay fat, stay fabulous, stay beautiful, and keep paddling forward. This is your host, Anna Connie Walters from Paddle Forward Podcast, signing off.